anti-Semitic UN Human Rights Council and ended all of the support for the UN Relief and Works Agency, which funneled money to Hamas and which was very disloyal to humanity. Today, I also took action to restore a maximum pressure policy on the Iranian regime, and we will once again enforce the most aggressive possible sanctions, drive Iranian oil exports to zero, and diminish the regime's capacity to fund terror throughout the region and throughout the world. We had no threat when I left office. Iran was not able to sell oil. Nobody was buying oil because I said, don't buy it. If you buy it, you're not doing any business with the United States. And Hamas was not being funded. Hezbollah was not being funded. Nobody was being funded. There would never have been an October 7th. 2 weeks ago, I once again designated the Houthis as a terrorist organization. They're trying to destroy world shipping lanes, and that's not going to happen. And over the weekend, I ordered airstrikes against senior ISIS leaders hiding in the caves of Somalia and took them out. Here in America, we've begun the process of deporting foreign terrorists, jihadists, and Hamas sympathizers from our soil, just as we have people that are extremely evil, and we're sending them out of our country. They came from jails. They came from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they were dumped into our country. They're gang members. We're getting them out at numbers that nobody can actually believe. And every single country is taking those people back. They said they would never take them back, and they're all taking them back, and they're taking them back very gladly. And I recently signed an executive order combating the vile wave of anti-Semitism that we've seen in the aftermath of the October 7th attacks. Together, America and Israel will renew the optimism that shined so brightly just 4 years ago. It was really a bright, beautiful light. We will restore calm and stability to the region and expand prosperity, opportunity, and hope to our nations and for all people in the Middle East, including the Arab and Muslim nations. Very important. We want the Arab and Muslim nations to have peace and have tranquility and have great lives. I'd like to now invite Prime Minister Netanyahu to say a few words, and we'll take some questions afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm honored that you invited me to be the first foreign leader to visit the White House in your second term. This is a testament to your friendship and support for the Jewish state and the Jewish people. I've said this before, I'll say it again. You are the greatest friend Israel has ever had in the White House. And that's why the people of Israel have such enormous respect for you. In your first term, you recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. You moved the American embassy there. You recognized Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. You withdrew from the disastrous Iran nuclear deal. I remember we spoke about it. You said, this is the worst deal I've ever seen. I'm elected, I'm walking out of it. That's exactly what you did. And I think it speaks loudly for just common sense, just looking at things and seeing them as they are. And of course, you also brokered the groundbreaking Abraham Accords in which Israel made peace with 4 Arab states. We did this in 4 months. Nothing happened for a quarter of a century, but in 4 months, we were able, working together under your leadership, to have 4 historic peace accords. And now in the first days of your second term, you picked up right where you left off. Your leadership helped bring our hostages home, among them American citizens. You freed up munitions that have been withheld from Israel. They had been withheld from Israel in the midst of a 7-front war for our existence. And you just freed it. You ended unjust sanctions against law-abiding Israeli citizens. You boldly confronted the scourge of anti-Semitism. You stopped funding, as you just said, international organizations like UNRWA that support and fund terrorists. And today, you renewed the maximum pressure campaign against Iran. Ladies and gentlemen, all this in just 2 weeks. Can we imagine where we'll be in 4 years? I can. I know you can, Mr. President. For our part, we in Israel have been pretty busy too. Since the horrendous October 7th attack, we've been fighting our common enemies and changing the face of the Middle East. On that infamous day, Hamas monsters savagely murdered 1,200 innocent people, including more than 40 Americans. They beheaded men, they raped women, they burnt babies alive, and they took 251 people hostage to the dungeons of Gaza. And after this worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust, Iran and its henchmen in the Middle East were absolutely ecstatic. Haniya praised the massacre. Sinwar said that Israel was finished. Nasrallah boasted that Israel was, here's what he said, as feeble as a spider's web. Well, Mr. President, Haniya is gone. Sinwar is gone. Nasrallah is gone. We've devastated Hamas. We decimated Hezbollah. We destroyed Assad's remaining armaments. And we crippled Iran's air defenses. And in doing this, we've defeated some of America's worst enemies. We took out terrorists who were wanted for decades for shedding rivers of American blood, including the blood of 241 Marines murdered in Beirut. We accomplished all this with the indomitable spirit of our people and the boundless courage of our soldiers. The Bible says that the people of Israel shall rise like lions, and boy did we rise. Today, the roar of the Lion of Judah is heard loudly throughout the Middle East. Israel has never been stronger, and the Iran terror axis has never been weaker. But as we discussed, Mr. President, to secure our future and bring peace to our region, we have to finish the job. In Gaza, Israel has 3 goals: destroy Hamas's military and governing capabilities, secure the release of all of our hostages, and ensure that Gaza never again poses a threat to Israel. I believe, Mr. President, that your willingness to puncture conventional thinking that has failed time and time and time again, your willingness to think outside the box with fresh ideas will help us achieve all these goals. And I've seen you do this many times. You cut to the chase. You see things others refuse to see. You say things others refuse to say. And after the jaws drop, people scratch their heads and they say, you know, he's right. And this is the kind of thinking that enabled us to bring the Abraham Accords. This is the kind of thinking that will reshape the Middle East and bring peace. We also see eye to eye on Iran. That's the same Iran that tried to kill us both. They tried to kill you, Mr. President. They tried through their proxies to kill me. We're both committed to rolling back Iran's aggression in the region and ensuring that Iran never develops a nuclear weapon. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, Israel will end the war by winning the war. Israel's victory will be America's victory. We will not only win the war, working together, we will win the peace. With your leadership, Mr. President, and our partnership, I believe that we will forge a brilliant future for our region and bring our great alliance to even greater heights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, baby. Very nice. Thank you. And J.D. Vance, everybody. J.D., please, Vice President, stand up. He's been doing a good job. He's been working very hard on all things, but this in particular. We'll take some questions, please. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, please. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. President, can a normalization deal with Saudi Arabia be achieved without the acknowledgement of a Palestinian state? That question for you too, Mr. Prime Minister. And Mr. President, given what you've said about Gaza, did the U.S. send troops to help secure the security vacuum?
So Saudi Arabia is going to be very helpful, and they have been very helpful. They want peace in the Middle East. It's very simple. We know their leader and their leaders very well. They're wonderful people, and they want peace in the Middle East. As far as Gaza is concerned, we'll do what is necessary. If it's necessary, we'll do that. We're going to take over that piece, and we're going to develop it, create thousands and thousands of jobs, and it'll be something that the entire Middle East can be very proud of. But everybody feels that continuing the same process that's gone on forever, over and over again, and then it starts, and then the killing starts, and all of the other problems start, and you end up in the same place, and we don't want to see that happen. So by the United States, with its stability and strength, owning it, especially the strength that we're developing and developed over the last fairly short period of time, I would say really since the election, I think we'll be a great keeper of something that is very, very strong, very powerful, and very, very good for the area, not just for Israel, for the entire Middle East, very important. And we'll, again, have thousands of jobs, and there'll be jobs for everyone, not for a specific group of people, but for everybody. Okay, please.
I think peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia is not only feasible, I think it's going to happen. I think if we had another half a year in your first term, it would have already happened.
True. Many, many more, I agree, many more nations.
I think you can't prejudge and pre-guess how we'll achieve it, but I'm committed to achieving it. And I know the president is committed to achieving it, and I think the Saudi leadership is interested to achieve it. So we'll give it a good shot, and I think we'll succeed.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
First of all, President Trump, did you hear from Prime Minister Netanyahu at your meeting guarantees that the ceasefire will go, including phase 2? And Prime Minister Netanyahu, why are you refusing to set up a national commission to investigate failures of the process?
Well, I can't tell you whether or not the ceasefire will hold. We've done, I think, a very masterful job. And we weren't helped very much by the Biden administration, I can tell you that. But we've gotten quite a few hostages out. We're going to get more out. But we're dealing with very complex people. And we are going to see whether or not it holds. We certainly want to have more come out. They've come out damaged in many ways, very damaged people. But they're going to get better, and they're going to be strong, and they're going to have a good life. And we hope to get as many as possible out. Whether or not it holds, I don't know. We hope it holds. We hope it holds.
I think that at the appropriate time, which I think will enable us to really investigate what happens, what were the causes of the failures, by an independent commission that will be accepted by the majority of the people. We don't want it accepted by one half of the people and not the other. I think we should have it, and we should find out exactly what happened. I'm insisting on it. And believe me, it'll surprise a lot of people when it happens.
Kelly, go ahead.
You are outlining something that is really quite striking tonight. You are talking about... Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Prime Minister. You are talking tonight about the United States taking over a sovereign territory. What authority would allow you to do that? Are you talking about a permanent occupation there, redevelopment? And Mr. Prime Minister, do you see this idea as a way to expand the boundaries of Israel and to have a longer peace, even though the Israeli people know how important that land is to you and your citizens, just as the space is inherited by the Palestinians as well?
I do see a long-term ownership position, and I see it bringing great stability to that part of the Middle East and maybe the entire Middle East. And everybody I've spoken to, this was not a decision made lightly. Everybody I've spoken to loves the idea of the United States owning that piece of land, developing and creating thousands of jobs with something that will be magnificent in a really magnificent area that nobody would know. Nobody can look because all they see is death and destruction and rubble and demolished buildings falling all over. It's just a terrible sight. I've studied it. I've studied this very closely over a lot of months, and I've seen it from every different angle. And it's a very, very dangerous place to be. And it's only going to get worse. And I think this is an idea that's gotten tremendous, and I'm talking about from the highest level of leadership, gotten tremendous praise. And if the United States can help to bring stability and peace in the Middle East, we'll do that. Bibi?
I mentioned again tonight our 3 goals. And the 3rd goal is to make sure that Gaza never poses a threat to Israel again. President Trump is taking it to a much higher level. He sees a different future for that piece of land that has been the focus of so much terrorism, so many attacks against us, so many trials and so many tribulations. He has a different idea. And I think it's worth paying attention to this. We're talking about it. He's exploring it with his people, with his staff. I think it's something that could change history. And it's worthwhile really pursuing this avenue.
Yeah, please, go ahead. Go ahead. Right.
President, I have a question for you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So before rebuilding Gaza again, obviously we'll take out all the hostages, and one of them is Dan Alexander, an American soldier who is alive. How will you be assured that you will take out all the hostages and then rebuild?
We're working very hard to get all the hostages. The word is all, and we are working very hard. So far, it's been moving along fairly rapidly, pretty much on schedule. I'd love to have them all out at one time, but we're taking them out, and tomorrow more are being released, and over the days more, and then we'll go into a phase 2. But we'd like to get all of the hostages, and if we don't, it will just make us somewhat more violent. I will tell you that, because they would have broken their word. Mr. Witkoff and his entire group have been working 24 hours around the clock, and they want them out, and promises have been made to them, and we'll see whether or not those promises will be kept. But we want all the hostages, that's right.
How much time do you think it will take?
Mr. President, do you support Israeli sovereignty in Judea and Samaria, areas which many believe is the biblical homeland of the Jewish people?
Well, we're discussing that with many of your representatives. You're represented very well, and people do like the idea, but we haven't taken a position on it yet. But we will be we'll be making an announcement probably on that very specific topic over the next 4 weeks. Go ahead, please. Please.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. You just said that you think all the Palestinians should be relocated to other countries. Does that mean that you do not support a two-state solution?
It doesn't mean anything about a 2-state or 1 state or any other state. It means that we want to have, we want to give people a chance at life. They have never had a chance at life because the Gaza Strip has been a hellhole for people living there. It's been horrible. Hamas has made it so bad, so dangerous, so unfair to people. And by doing what I'm recommending that we do, it's a very strong recommendation, but it is a strong recommendation. By doing that, we think we're going to bring perhaps great peace to long beyond this area. And I have to stress, this is not for Israel. This is for everybody in the Middle East, Arabs, Muslims. This is for everybody. This would be where they can partake in terms of jobs and living and all of the other benefits. And I think it's very important. It just doesn't work the other way. You know, you can't keep trying. They just has been going along for so many decades, you can't even count. You just can't keep doing. You have to learn from history. You can't keep doing the same mistake over and over again. Gaza is a hellhole right now. It was before the bombing started, frankly. And we're going to give people a chance to live in a beautiful community that's safe and secure. And I think you're going to see a tremendous outflowing of support. I can tell you, I spoke to other leaders of countries in the Middle East, and they love the idea. They say it would really bring stability, and what we need is stability. Yes, sir, please. Go ahead.
Thank you. Are you still committed to imposing sanctions on the ICC, despite the move being stalled in the Senate? And please, a question for the Prime Minister as well. The President has been very clear about his desire to achieve a deal with Saudi Arabia. How do you settle this if Israel is required to renew the war against Hamas in the future?
Go ahead, Bibi.
I think everybody understands that just as the President fought and defeated Al-Qaeda and ISIS, that we can't leave Hamas there because Hamas will continue the battle to destroy Israel. They'll do, you know, when in this temporary ceasefire, one of their leaders comes out, you know what he says? We're going to do October 7th again, except we'll do it bigger. So obviously, you can't talk about peace neither with Hamas or in the Middle East if this, toxic, murderous organization is left standing. Any more that you could make peace in Europe after World War II if the Nazi regime was left standing and the Nazi army was left standing. You want a different future? You got to knock out the people who want to destroy you and destroy peace. That's what we're going to do. I think that will also usher in, actually, the peace with Saudi Arabia and with others. And I think there will be others, too.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
My name is Ms. Gazi Afghan woman, as a high expectation from you. Do you have any plan to change Afghanistan situation? Are you able to recognize Taliban? Because I'm an Afghan journalist, Afghan Safard woman. Any comment about Afghanistan? What's your future plan for Afghan people, especially Afghanistan?
I have a little hard time understanding you. Where are you from? Oh. Actually, it's a beautiful voice and a beautiful accent. The only problem is I can't understand a word you're saying. But I just say this, good luck, live in peace. Go ahead, please. That's okay, yeah, please.
Prime Minister, you said earlier today that it was tough for you to implement these sanctions on Iran, but you did indicate that you were willing to negotiate with them. What would that look like, and are you in conversations with them? And the same for the Prime Minister, sir.
I hated doing it. I want Iran to be peaceful and successful. I hated doing it. I did it once before, and we brought them down to a level where they were unable to give any money. They had to survive themselves, and they had no money. They were essentially broke, and they had no money for, as I said, Hezbollah. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for any form of terror, the 28, if you call it, the 28 sites of terror. They had no money for any of it. They had to do their own and focus on their own well-being. And I hated to do it then, and I hate to do it just as much now. And I say this, and I say this to Iran, who's listening very intently. I would love to be able to make a great deal, a deal where you can get on with your lives and you'll do wonderfully. You'll do wonderfully. Incredible people, industrious, beautiful, just an unbelievable group of people in Iran. And I know them well, have many friends from Iran and many friends that are Americans from Iran, and they're very proud of Iran. But I hated to do it, just so you understand. And I hope we're going to be able to do something so that it doesn't end up in a very catastrophic situation. I don't want to see that happen. I really want to see peace, and I hope that we're able to do that. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. I'm not putting restrictions. They cannot have one thing. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. And if I think that they will have a nuclear weapon, despite what I just said, I think that's going to be very unfortunate for them. If, on the other hand, they can convince us that they won't, and I hope they can. It's very easy to do. It's actually very easy to do. I think they're going to have an unbelievable future. Yeah, please, sir, go ahead.
You just laid out your plan for Gaza.
Yes.
Can you lay out your plan for Ukraine and also...
For Ukraine?
For Ukraine, yes. You consider yourself a strong leader. You blamed your predecessor for letting Russia to take over Ukraine. Will you demand from Putin to get out of Ukraine, from sovereign territory of Ukraine?
So we're dealing right now in the subject. I don't want to spend a lot of time because we're here for another reason, but we are having very good talks, very constructive talks on Ukraine. And we are talking to the Russians. We're talking to the Ukrainian leadership. It would have never happened. That would have never happened. It should have never happened. I get reports every week, the number of soldiers, mostly soldiers now, the cities have been largely demolished. You talk about a very sad sight to see. We talk Gaza. Well, many of these cities look as bad as Gaza and worse, what's happened to them. And I want to see that end. And I want to see it end for one simple reason, the life of young people being absolutely obliterated on both sides. You probably have 700,000 Ukrainian soldiers dead, 800,000, maybe more Russian soldiers dead. It's very flat land, and the only thing that's going to stop a bullet is a human body. In this case, usually soldiers. And the numbers are staggering when you hear the real numbers in Ukraine, what the numbers are. And this doesn't include the cities that have been demolished and all of the people that were killed. So I want to see it stopped. We're having very good talks, and I think we're going to get it. I think something will be hopefully dramatically, it will rise above everything. You can't let this continue. This is an absolute slaughter that's taking place on the beautiful farmlands of Ukraine, and we have to stop it. We can't let this continue. It is a human tragedy, and we're going to try very hard to stop it. Yeah, please, go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Okay. Mr. President, what's your view about Palestinian leader Abbas' role in all the regional changes you want to do? And a question for the Prime Minister, what's your view on President Trump wanting to reach a deal with Iran and not a much more active military stance towards it?
Go ahead, baby. Go ahead.
I think the president just said something that I think is the pivot of everything that we're talking about. He said Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. And we fully agree with that. If this goal can be achieved by a maximum pressure campaign, so be it. But I think the most important thing is to focus on the goal, which the president just did, and I fully agree with him.
Well, I said it, and he said it very well. It's a campaign of pressure to see if we can get something done. He doesn't want to do what some people think will automatically happen because they're very difficult people to deal with, as you know. But if we could solve this problem without warfare, without all of the things that you've been witnessing over the last number of years, it would be, I think it would be a tremendous thing. Go ahead, please.
Do you have any plans to visit Israel soon?
To visit where?
Israel and Gaza.
Oh, well, I love Israel. I will visit there, and I'll visit Gaza, and I'll visit Saudi Arabia, and I'll visit other places all over the Middle East. The Middle East is an incredible place, so vibrant, so it's just one of the really beautiful places, and with great people. And I think a lot of bad leadership has taken place in the Middle East that's allowed this to happen. It's just terrible. And that includes on the American side, by the way. We should have never gone in there a long time ago, spent trillions of dollars and created so much death. So that includes Americans. But, yeah, I'll be visiting a lot of different places in the Middle East. I've been invited everywhere, but I will be visiting some, yeah. Okay. Let's go. Caitlin, go ahead. Caitlin.
Thank you so much, President Trump.
Caitlin, go ahead.
On what you were saying there.
Say it. Go ahead, please.
Just to follow up on what you were saying about the Gazans leaving Gaza, going to other countries. One, where exactly are you suggesting that they should go? And two, are you saying they should return after it's rebuilt? And if not, who do you envision living there?
I envision world people living there, the world's people. I think you'll make that into an international, unbelievable place. I think the potential in the Gaza Strip is unbelievable. And I think the entire world, representatives from all over the world will be there, and they'll live there. Palestinians also. Palestinians will live there. Many people will live there. But they've tried the other, and they've tried it for decades and decades and decades. It's not going to work. It didn't work. It will never work. And you have to learn from history. History has, you just can't let it keep repeating itself. We have an opportunity to do something that could be phenomenal. And I don't want to be cute. I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be so bad. This could be so magnificent. But more importantly than that is the people that have been absolutely destroyed that live there now can live in peace in a much better situation because they're living in hell. And those people will now be able to live in peace. We'll make sure that it's done world class. It'll be wonderful for the people. Palestinians mostly we're talking about. And I have a feeling that despite them saying no, I have a feeling that the king in Jordan and that the general president, but that the general in Egypt will open their hearts and will give us the kind of land that we need to get this done, and people can live in harmony and in peace. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. You've just been listening to a press conference with President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In it, the president said the U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip. Take a listen.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different, just can't go back.
The president repeatedly called Gaza a hellhole, went on to say that it could be the Riviera of the Middle East. It's unclear what exactly the president means by all of this. It comes 15 months after Hamas terrorists stormed into Israel, killing hundreds and triggering that relentless bombardment in Gaza with tens of thousands of Palestinian lives lost. And tonight, just as Gazans are finally getting back home in the midst of that fragile ceasefire, President Trump has also doubled down on his suggestion that Palestinians should not go back to what's left of their homes. These are the images of the devastation many are just returning home to. President Trump said today that they should get a fresh, beautiful piece of land someplace else. This goes against Israeli policy and the posture of the U.S. government for decades. Egypt, Jordan, and the Arab League have all opposed the idea, Egypt's president calling it an injustice that we can never take part in. So what happens now? Do these comments threaten that fragile and tenuous ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas? For now, we want to bring in our Perry Russum, who joins us now live from Washington. And Perry, just give us a sense, break down what you just heard.
I mean, we're talking about the U.S. taking over the Gaza Strip, with President Trump talking about long-term ownership positions. What does that look like? How much will it cost? He's talked about being open to the idea of sending in U.S. troops. I mean, there's so many things where we can begin. Will this be a state? Will it be a territory? He says that he wants world people living there, as you mentioned, calling it the possibility of the Riviera of the Middle East. But important to note here, he's saying the world cannot repeat the past. He's talking about moving 1.8 million people who live in the Gaza Strip, essentially saying you cannot live here anymore. So the question for those people is, what happens if they don't want to go? They've been living there for years, generations of families living there. Imagine just waking up one day and being told you no longer can stay here, and where are they going to go? I mean, he's mentioned Jordan and Egypt. Those two countries have definitively said that they do not want people coming there, and Trump's answer to that is no, they will take those countries. So this is essentially opening up Pandora's box of foreign relations, of what's possible in the Middle East. But Trump's saying that, he wants to bring great peace to the Middle East, and saying that other countries are interested in this idea. This is a process that is going to take decades, possibly. This is a project that will outlast President Trump, so we'll have to see how long this lasts, and including reaction from members of Congress of what this entails for the American public and the American military and the American taxpaying dollars.
And it was interesting because not only did you have Trump saying that he was going to take over the Gaza Strip, that the U.S. would, but then you had Netanyahu, who said he thought it was an idea worth pursuing. And I want to take a listen to another point when Trump was asked about what he said about taking Gaza over.
You are talking tonight about the United States taking over a sovereign territory. What authority would allow you to do that? Are you talking about a permanent occupation there, redevelopment? And Mr. Prime Minister, do you see this idea as a way to expand the boundaries of Israel and to have a longer peace, even though the Israeli people know how important that land is to you and your citizens, just as the space is inherited by the Palestinians as well?
I do see a long-term ownership position, and I see it bringing great stability to that part of the Middle East and maybe the entire Middle East. And everybody I've spoken to, this was not a decision made lightly. Everybody I've spoken to loves the idea of the United States owning that piece of land, developing and creating thousands of jobs with something that will be magnificent in a really magnificent area that nobody would know. Nobody can look because all they see is death and destruction and rubble and demolished buildings falling all over. It's just a terrible sight.
Rustin, we have to imagine that these comments are going to ripple throughout Washington and beyond.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be so much reaction coming into this, and including, you know, where are these people? I'm just curious where they're expecting 1.8 million people to go. You have President Trump mentioning, oh, one country could take them, 12 countries could take them. They could go to numerous sites or one site. And remember, he's not talking about moving these people. He used the word permanent earlier today. And as we were watching Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu during that news conference, he was kind of sidestepping some of the questions on his thoughts of all of that, you know, kind of supporting President Trump in this idea, in this endeavor. As Netanyahu was mentioning, you know, he did not really imagine that Trump would take it to the level that he is. But, you know, there's going to be so much reaction coming in, not only from D.C., here in D.C., but also from around the world of what this is going to look like. Because the next question is going to be, when does the U.S. get involved? And then when does the U.S. know when to leave? Is this something where the U.S. is going to have a stake in the Middle East in terms of land for the foreseeable future?
A lot of questions, Perry, those that you've come up with, and certainly more to come. Now I want to bring in ABC's Mary Alice Parks, who's there in the room where President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu just concluded that press conference. Mary Alice, give us a sense of what stood out to you.
Yeah, so many questions after that headline you have been talking about, the President of the United States saying that he would like for the United States to permanently or indefinitely own and control the Gaza Strip, saying that there has to be new historic thinking in the region. Of course, I was eager to ask what his next steps are, how he thinks he would have any authority on the national stage, on the international world stage, to take over a sovereign piece of territory like you have been talking about, where he is imagining the Palestinian people go. And should American troops at this point, Linsey, be prepared to deploy? It is hard to imagine any version of a U.S. occupation that does not include heavy U.S. military presence. This is the same president who campaigned on getting the United States out of forever wars. Is he now suggesting and already preparing for American troops to deploy to the region to occupy the Gaza Strip? What would they do with Palestinians who refuse to leave? And major questions, like you were getting at, about whether Israel fully endorses this plan to have, in theory, the U.S. military on their doorstep.
What was really interesting also, which I mentioned a little earlier with Perry, is that Netanyahu seemed to be potentially on board. At one point, he celebrated what he called Trump's ability to puncture conventional thinking. And he said one of his main objectives is to make sure that Gaza no longer offers or presents a threat in any way to Israel. And he suggested that if the United States owned Gaza, that would be an answer to that question. I want to just switch gears for a moment, because the president also said that he has restored his maximum pressure campaign on Iran. That's something that both leaders mentioned tonight, that they're interested in rolling back Iran's aggression in the region. What does that entail?
Yeah, it's a great question. We don't have a lot of details about what else that maximum pressure campaign would entail. There's already so many sanctions, such a blockade against almost anything going into Iran that is not humanitarian goods from the global community. But look, big questions about whether Israel at this point is still considering a military strike against Iranian nuclear facilities. There was a lot of chatter here in D.C. about whether that was a part of this visit, whether a part of this visit was Prime Minister Netanyahu trying to get permission from the United States or advance a conversation about going after nuclear sites inside Iran. I imagine there would have been actually significantly more questions about that had President Trump not made such news right at the top. And you're right, while it was very interesting to listen to Netanyahu, who seemed to endorse or smile at this prospect of U.S. occupation of the Gaza Strip, he is going to face immediate questions back home and on the global stage about whether this plan would entail Israeli settlements inside Gaza and whether that was his plan and intention all along.
Mary Alice Parks for us. Thank you so much. I want to bring in our chief national correspondent, Matt Gutman, who joins us on the phone. Hey, Matt, I just want to play a bite that we just heard at the press conference. Let's take a listen.
You have to learn from history. History has, you just can't let it keep repeating itself. We have an opportunity to do something that could be phenomenal. And I don't want to be cute. I don't want to be a wise guy, but the Riviera of the Middle East, this could be something that could be so bad. This could be so magnificent.
And you heard him there, Matt, talking about Gaza potentially as the Riviera of the Middle East. Just talk about this idea of the United States taking over the Gaza Strip, which would obviously upend decades of policy.
Hey, let's just step back for a sec, Lindsay. I mean, and look at this press conference broadly. This is breathtaking, astounding, any superlative that you want to use. We've never, in the history of U.S. policy vis-a-vis Israel or the Palestinians, ever seen anything like this. The stated policy of the United States going back to 1947, when then President Truman approved and agreed and really gave the push to the UN partition of two states, was a Jewish state and a Palestinian state living side by side, and Gaza was an integral part of that. And that has been the policy since then. So this is so different, such a massive departure. And I think largely what it seems that President Trump is angling for is a grand deal. He wants to wrap in Saudi Arabia. He wants to fold a deal between Israel and Saudi Arabia that would fold in somehow the Palestinians. He's looking for a grand peace agreement in the Middle East that would change the face of the Middle East as we know it and change the 100 years of history as he described it. Now, putting aside all of the logistics and the policy issues and the diplomacy and the human factor, this is obviously like a massive departure. But let's just talk about what Gaza is right now. It is a place that has been absolutely decimated. Something like 80% of the buildings have been destroyed. It is not only one of the most densely populated parts of the planet, it also happens to be one of the most least filled with infrastructure, one of the most devastated, one of the most toxic because of all the munitions and the destroyed buildings and the hazards everywhere. So it is literally the most complicated construction project probably ever attempted once it begins. And who's going to buy into it? Who's going to pay for it? Who's going to secure it? How is this going to look? And the answers to that are unclear. The only answer that President Trump seemed to provide, Lindsay, was, well, I'll tell you who's not going to be there, at least some of them, are the Palestinians.
Right, and so let's talk about logistics aside for a moment. Matt, you've lived in Israel, you covered Israeli politics for a long time. Give us a sense, I mean, he was talking about ultimately, if this were able to be done, right, that ultimately this would be a destination for people of the world, Palestinians among them, he suggested, but not this designated land for Palestinian people. And I'm just wondering if you're getting any sense of real-time reaction at all yet trickling in.
It's still very early in the morning there, so not a lot of reaction. It is obviously taking up all the morning headlines so far. But again, it's pretty early there, about 2:40 in the morning. But it is going to be a massive shock to the entire system. And, you know, we saw Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu sort of deftly handled that moment, saying this is absolutely something that's worth looking into, certainly worthwhile talking about. I don't think he expected this. I don't think he saw this coming. This is not something that appears to have been discussed in bilaterals beforehand, or Netanyahu would have been more prepared. So that is a major question, and I don't know if Israelis are necessarily so into this. Okay, so two things. First, back in 2005, when Israel left the Gaza Strip for the first time so Israel occupied the Gaza Strip in 1967. Ariel Sharon, then prime minister in 2005, unilaterally evacuated all the settlements, all Israeli military installations in the Gaza Strip to get out of the Gaza Strip because it was massively expensive and many people were dying trying to secure the settlements in the Gaza Strip. Israelis, by and large, felt that it was a losing proposition. Nobody wanted to be there. It was considered a place that Israel had no intention of ever going back to. That has obviously changed, but it's only a very small minority of Israelis who support it, especially now that it's considered a place that is so antagonistic to Israel. So President Trump might have just proposed something that I think most Israelis, despite alert rightward since October 7th of 2023, are not in favor of, and is well to the right of where most of Israeli society is right now. So, massive questions in that department. But after that 2005 withdrawal in which Israel left completely, there was a massive amount of investment in the Gaza Strip, and there was a hope by Qatar, by Saudi Arabia, and by others. And there was a hope that it could turn into the Riviera of the Middle East. Gaza does indeed have gorgeous beaches, a very well-educated population as well. And there was an aspiration that it could be something different. But Hamas ended up taking over, and that dream certainly fizzled. But I just wanted to note that this is not something without any precedent. And one more thing to note, there are gas fields off the coast of Gaza that could also provide some infusion of cash if only they could be developed. So there is some hope for something happening there. It just needs the political will, and at this point, a tremendous amount of money. And again, Linsey, we are talking about many, many millions of tons of rubble to deal with. Just the logistics of getting infrastructure, water, sewage, roads, electricity, homes, food, industry back into Gaza are monumental, something that, honestly, I don't think we've experienced since World War II.
All right, Matt Gutman, so appreciate your time and insight. I want to bring in ABC News contributor Daryl Blocker. Daryl, help us understand how much of a departure from the typical U.S. position President Trump's suggestion is of taking an ownership position in Gaza.
I think ownership will be walked back, Linsey. Ownership is something that we absolutely do not want to get into in that particular region. And it's not the first time that something like this has been suggested. But the timing is off. You have people who are just now being allowed to return back to their homes just to be told by, the leader of the free world that, you're no longer wanted here and to find somewhere else to go, Egypt or Jordan.
And having the U.S. involvement in this kind of way, what might that mean for already rising tensions in the area?
So the United States, again, is in the inevitable situation of being the middle person. We should not be making these pronouncements as the person talking to the Gazans, the Palestinians, and the people speaking with the Israelis. We need to stay neutral, and this clearly puts us in one camp over the other.
This could lead to more displacement. There's already a large population of displaced Palestinians living inside nations like Jordan. Do you think that Jordan or Egypt could take the hundreds of thousands of displaced from Gaza, even if they were willing? Because we know that the leadership in those countries has already said that they think that this is a bad idea.
And Linsey, we're 15 months into this crisis. So if the Egyptians and the Jordanians were truly going to step up and take these people who literally don't have anywhere to live right now, it would have already been done. They might be taking in, trickling a couple of numbers, but in terms of the tens or hundreds of thousands, I honestly don't see that happening. And the people in Gaza are very different than the people who are in the West Bank in terms of language, in terms of their history with the Muslim Brotherhood, which the Gaza, the Hamas is just an offshoot of the MB. So there are a lot of things that they need to work out, absolutely. And I think both sides are going to walk back some of this based on the fact that the Israelis don't really want that position.
How do you think that American partners like Saudi Arabia will react to these suggestions from President Trump?
I think the world kind of recognizes that we don't react to the first thing that President Trump says, to let things, settle overnight, find out what he truly meant by whatever he was saying. So it's just happened right now. I would just caution people to just take a deep breath and figure out whether tomorrow a different story might come out.
All right, well, we shall see. All right, Darrell Blocker, our thanks to you. And want to bring back in Perry Russom, joins us once again from Washington with a final thought. Perry, is this turning out to be a part of a pattern for Trump, would you say?
Yeah, in the last 15 days, the first 15 days of his presidency, he is talking about a land grab on some very important sites for the world. I mean, expanding U.S. territory with the Panama Canal, which is very important for trade. Greenland, for national security, also has lithium, graphite, and other minerals. And now Gaza, which is very important in his mind for peace in the Middle East. So right now we are seeing the commander-in-chief work as a developer-in-chief. So one of the questions it's just a flood of questions on what this means for the U.S. and for the Middle East, for foreign relations. If he claims ownership, develops it, could he then sell it? I'm just curious what the end game is for Trump on this when he opened up Pandora's box with this just about 30 minutes ago.
He is a developer at heart, after all. Okay, Perry Russom, our thanks to you. During President Trump's meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu, the president referred to Gaza as a, quote, demolition site. Our chief foreign correspondent, Ian Pannell, today got a firsthand look at the devastation there. Ian, at ABC News, the first American news organization, allowed an up-close look into Gaza since the ceasefire.
As President Trump suggests Palestinians should leave Gaza, we get an up-close look at the urgent humanitarian effort underway from the back of this Black Hawk helicopter. Since the guns fell silent and hostages were exchanged, we're the first American news outlet to see Jordan and others in the Middle East conduct these mercy missions by air, hoping to ease a growing crisis.
Right now, we have Jordan to our right, Israel to our left. We're actually flying over the Dead Sea with the Royal Jordanian Air Force. These troops are delivering this much-needed aid to Gaza, which is just in the distance.
After 2 long hours in the air, we finally touched down on the edge of Gaza. The Jordanian airmen rushing to get the aid on the ground under the watchful eye of the Israeli military in the distance.
Well, this is as far as we're allowed to go. The barbed wire is stopping us from entering further into Gaza. But all around here, you can see the debris, the wreckage, the ruins of what used to be people's homes, people's lives.
As we fly out, the impact of 15 months of war is stark. The bulldozered remains of a strip of land more than 2 million people still call home.
Linsey, despite President Trump repeating his comments yet again that the Palestinians should move out of Gaza, there's almost universal opposition to the idea here in the Middle East from the Jordanian government, the Egyptian government, the Saudi government, the Arab League and many others, but not least from the Palestinians of Gaza themselves. Linsey?
Ian, thank you. 2 of President Trump's most controversial nominees cleared the first hurdle toward confirmation. Secretary of Health and Human Services nominee Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Director of National Intelligence nominee Tulsi Gabbard advancing out of committee on party line votes. And it comes as special government employee Elon Musk is advancing his plans to dismantle U.S. aid. Here's ABC's senior political correspondent Rachel Scott.
Tonight, 2 of the president's most controversial nominees clearing key hurdles on track for confirmation as skeptical Republican senators fall in line. Health Secretary nominee Robert F. Kennedy Jr. winning approval of the Finance Committee after the lone Republican holdout Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, who is also a doctor, voted yes.
Mr. Cassidy. Mr. Cassidy, aye.
Cassidy had grilled Kennedy over his years of spreading misinformation about vaccines. The senator acknowledged he was struggling with the nomination. But ultimately, Cassidy, who is facing re-election next year, fully aware of the pressure he could face for voting no, now giving Kennedy his full support.
Ultimately, restoring trust in our public health institution is too important
And I think Mr. Kennedy can help get that done.
A few hours later, former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, Trump's pick for Director of National Intelligence, passing a party line vote in the Senate Intelligence Committee, despite Republican concerns over her meeting with former Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad and her refusal to call Edward Snowden a traitor. Gabbard and Kennedy, two disruptors in a team of them. The leading figure, billionaire Elon Musk, who is out to reshape the government itself. His Department of Government Efficiency, staffed largely by young engineers, at least one of them just 19, have brought beds into their government offices. Musk posting on X, working the weekend is a superpower. His team getting access to the Treasury Department's payment system, which processes trillions of dollars of the government's bills and includes the personal information of millions of Americans. Musk then seizing control of USAID, which provides humanitarian assistance around the world, helping an estimated 32 million children suffering malnutrition and bringing food, water, shelter, and health care to victims of natural disasters. USAID's $43 billion budget is a tiny fraction of what the government spends, about 1%. But Musk, who is the world's richest man, posting, "We spent the weekend feeding USAID into the wood chipper." And tonight, sources tell ABC News that the State Department is now starting to evacuate all USAID staff who are on foreign assignments worldwide, some 1,500 to 2,000 people. The goal is to bring all those workers and their families back to the United States by this weekend. On Capitol Hill, Republicans applauding Musk's goals.
He's throwing out big ideas. And if anybody thinks that all of these big ideas are going to be implemented to conclusion, they don't understand the process of disruption.
But Democrats sounding the alarm.
It is unconscionable for him to be exercising the kind of influence and power that he is with his conflicts of interest and his financial benefits flowing to him from the kind of destructive impact. It's not disruptive, it's destructive.
Rachel Scott joins us now. And Rachel, I understand after a few days of questions, the Treasury Department has clarified what Elon Musk's team will have access to. What are they saying?
Yeah, and a lot of this is response to Democrats here on Capitol Hill who had concerns about this. So the Treasury Department in a letter saying tonight that these officials have read-only access to the sensitive information from the Treasury Department. In this letter, they sort of describe it in the sort of the same way that an auditor would have access to some of this sensitive information, and so that they could oversee it, they can review it and suggest some of those cuts. They also say that these representatives that are now working at the Treasury Department, but also working with this Department of Government Efficiency on Elon Musk's team, are special government employees. They have these top secret security clearances as well, but the Treasury Department insisting that they will be upheld to the highest ethical standards. Democrats tonight, Linsey, I will tell you, they are not buying this. In a statement, they are saying, I'm sure the Treasury Department and the president want to save face and downplay the risks as Elon Musk seizes power, Linsey.
Rachel Scott from Capitol Hill for us. Thanks so much, Rachel. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us.
David Muir, ABC's World News Tonight, the most watched newscast in America, and honored with the Emmy Award, winner for Outstanding Live News Program. More Americans watch World News Tonight with David Muir than any other newscast.
People do not know how to date. That's why they come to us.
As a matchmaker, we're here to help you get your wings on.
Let's get some people married. Why are you single?
Maybe the kind of guys that I go for.
You go for hot guys.
Yeah.
It's a pitfall.
What would you say are like the top things you're looking for?
You don't like hairy men, so all Muslims are out. What are you talking about?
This process doesn't have to suck. He's cute.
Make it happen, boo.
This family is suffocated. We are all here to help them. We're gonna make this happen. We have 96 hours to build a house.
Come on, guys, it's moving day. Let's go. It can't be real.
This was more than just extreme home makeover. This was extreme life makeover.
Extreme Makeover Home Edition, Thursday on ABC and stream on Hulu.
All we want is to find our way home.
I'll get you home. Got a crew of murderous bounty hunters. He's coming after us. We have to move fast.
We have no idea who he is.
You can trust me.
You're a Jedi, right?
Of course.
What just happened?
Watch this.
Skeleton Crew. New episodes Tuesdays, only on Disney+.
The news never stops. We are here in Israel, a nation at war.
We heard what appeared to be gunfire. The former president rushed off the stage.
Hurricane Helene ravaging the coastline of Florida.
It's moving really fast, screaming across the state.
And that's why ABC News Live never stops.
Taking you to the center of the story.
As news breaks live.
We hear the small arms fire around us. We're right on the border between Ukraine and Russia.
ABC News Live is there for you at the start of your day all morning live.
ABC News Live, right there, as events unfold across the day. ABC News Live, breaking down the day's top stories.
Lyle and Eric Menendez, there is new evidence in this case.
ABC News Live Prime going there, wherever the story is.
Are you going to build it back up? And ABC News Live, lighting up the weekends.
With breaking news and all the latest pop headlines.
Happy Oscar Sunday.
A lot to watch for tonight.
ABC News Live.
Because the news never stops.
GMA this week. The doctor's in, and we're talking heart health. From the 5 key numbers you really need to know now to the one test that could save your life and the symptoms every woman needs to be aware of this week. This vital GMA Heart Health Alert is for you.
Reporting from the volcano eruption in Grindavik, Iceland, I'm Marcus Moore. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming with ABC News Live.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We begin tonight with a bombshell from President Trump late today, saying alongside Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, the U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip. Take a listen.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different, just can't go back.
It's not clear exactly what the president means by all of this. It comes 15 months after Hamas terrorists stormed into Israel, killing hundreds and triggering that relentless bombardment in Gaza with tens of thousands of Palestinian lives lost. And tonight, just as Gazans are finally getting back home in the midst of that fragile ceasefire, President Trump has also doubled down on his suggestion that Palestinians should not go back to what's left of their homes. These are the images of the devastation many are just returning home to. President Trump said today that they should get a fresh, beautiful piece of land someplace else. This goes against Israeli policy and the posture of the U.S. government for decades now. Egypt, Jordan, the Arab League have all opposed the idea. Egypt's president calling it an injustice that we can never take part in. So what now? Do these comments threaten that fragile and tenuous ceasefire between Israel and Hamas? Here's our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, with the latest.
Tonight, standing next to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, President Trump declaring that the United States would take over the Gaza Strip.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years.
The big question, who would live there? Earlier in the day, Trump saying the Palestinian residents of Gaza should relocate elsewhere.
It would be my hope that we could do something really nice, really good, where they wouldn't want to return. Why would they want to return? The place has been hell. It's been one of the meanest, toughest places on earth.
But Trump adamant.
The only reason they want to go back, and I believe this strongly, is because they have no alternative. What's the alternative? Go where? There's no other alternative. If they had an alternative, they'd much rather not go back to Gaza and live in a beautiful alternative that's safe.
Trump saying Egypt or Jordan should take the Palestinians in. But Egypt and Jordan have rejected that idea. Today, Trump saying that's just talk.
Our thanks to Mary Bruce, and let's get right to our Perry Russum in Washington, D.C. Perry, break down for us what the president proposed tonight.
Yeah, look, I mean, in his own words, he's talking about a long-term ownership position in Gaza. And remember, not too long ago on Inauguration Day, 15 days ago, he was talking about the ceasefire talks between Israel and Hamas when he said, it's not our war, it's their war. But apparently tonight the president sees an opportunity, in his own words, to own the land, own the Gaza Strip, develop the land, create jobs. And it's something that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu appears to be in favor for. But there are many questions about what does this mean? Does the Gaza Strip become a territory? Is it a state? Who's going to live there? I mean, tonight President Trump saying the world people will live there. The world people will live there. But he also said that they cannot repeat the past. So he wants 1.8 million people who live in the Gaza Strip to leave. And there are major questions about where those people are going to go. Is it going to be Egypt? Is it going to be Jordan? I mean, those two countries specifically said that they will not allow people to come in there, but Trump responded by saying, yes, they will. I mean, there's just so many unanswered questions about what this means in terms of geopolitical ramifications. How is Congress going to get involved? How much will this cost? Is the U.S. military going to get involved, as President Trump alluded to, saying that he's open to the idea of sending troops to maintain security there in the Gaza Strip. If he's talking about developing the land in the Gaza Strip, this is a project that will take at least a decade, possibly even more. This is a project that will outlast his presidency. So this is a very long-term plan, a long-term goal, long-term idea he is opening the U.S. into right now.
And it is interesting that Netanyahu didn't seem to balk at it. He suggested it was an idea that perhaps should be pursued.
Yeah, he kind of stood out of the way and let President Trump talk. I mean, in Netanyahu's own words, he called Trump the greatest friend Israel has ever had in the White House. And just judging by what Trump was saying earlier today, it seems like the U.S. is going to be the main country in charge of this project. Major questions about funding. Are countries in the Middle East going to get involved? Will Saudi Arabia get involved? And then ultimately, once the U.S. does get involved, if this idea does go through, when does the U.S. know to get out? Will the U.S. get out? Will the U.S. view this, in Trump's own words, as the Riviera of the Middle East? Potentially, you know, a chance for the U.S. to make money there. Where's Trump's mind in all of this? There's just so many questions that still have to be answered, and this is something that's going to be on top of mind for lawmakers here in D.C. for the coming days and weeks as well. But you can't forget about those 1.8 million people who have called the Gaza Strip home, who found themselves in the middle of this war, who are essentially told now to get out, and they just don't know where they're supposed to go. You have President Trump talking about numerous sites, or one site, one country, 12 countries, so it seems like he's open to a bunch of different possibilities right now, Lindsay.
All right, Perry Russum for us. Thanks so much. Let's bring in ABC News contributor and former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East, Mick Mulroy. Mick, do we have any clue if Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu expected that Trump would announce today that the U.S. would take over Gaza?
So, Lindsay, we don't know. He did look somewhat surprised, but they did have a pre-meeting with Steve Witkoff yesterday before this meeting. So I would assume that this topic would have been discussed then. So to prepare the prime minister for this really surprising proposal. There's many issues with it. I'm sure Prime Minister Netanyahu knows those issues as well as anybody else. But certainly, I think, you know, from his reaction, he is going to listen to this and try to determine just how he can move forward.
And Mick, with your experience, is the U.S. in any position to put boots on the ground in Gaza? What would that even look like?
So, of course, this came from President Trump, who has promised to disentangle U.S. military from wars overseas, to include the wars in the Middle East. And we're obviously not directly involved in this militarily, so this would be injecting the U.S. into a conflict. It's important to point out that of this almost 2 million people in Gaza, they're likely not to go willingly. So they will have to be expelled by force, which would require military force, pushing them into a country. Two countries would have already completely said that is not going to be allowed. So this would be a substantial undertaking, and it's very difficult to see how it would actually occur.
With regard to Trump saying that he would like to see the U.S. take ownership position in Gaza, just in terms of cost and time, what would it take to rebuild Gaza?
So I've seen estimations that it would take anywhere but 10 to 15 years and cost anywhere between $50 to $65 billion. And that's just basic reconstruction. A lot of that would be, of course, dismantling and removing the tons and tons of rubble that has been caused by this conflict. So it'd go potentially 15 years to even get to a place where people could move in and live there if they were doing a complete demolition and then a reconstruction of a 25-mile long strip of land.
All right, Nick Mulroy, so appreciate your time as always. Thank you. One of President Trump's nominees was just confirmed. Pam Bondi will serve as Attorney General after a 54-46 vote. Senator Fetterman was the only Democrat to vote yes. Meanwhile, two controversial nominees cleared the first hurdle. Secretary of Health and Human Services nominee Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Director of National Intelligence nominee Tulsi Gabbard advancing out of committee on party line votes. Here's ABC senior political correspondent Rachel Scott.
Tonight, two of the president's most controversial nominees clearing key hurdles, on track for confirmation, as skeptical Republican senators fall in line. Health Secretary nominee Robert F. Kennedy Jr. winning approval of the Finance Committee after the lone Republican holdout, Bill Cassidy of Louisiana, who is also a doctor, voted yes.
Mr. Cassidy. Mr. Cassidy, aye.
Cassidy had grilled Kennedy over his years of spreading misinformation about vaccines. The senator acknowledged he was struggling with the nomination, but ultimately Cassidy, who is facing re-election next year, fully aware of the pressure he could face for voting no, now giving Kennedy his full support.
Ultimately restoring trust in our public health institution is too important, and I think Mr. Kennedy can help get that done.
A few hours later, former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, Trump's pick for Director of National Intelligence, passing a party line vote in the Senate Intelligence Committee, despite Republican concerns over her meeting with former Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad and her refusal to call Edward Snowden a traitor. Gabbard and Kennedy, two disruptors in a team of them. The leading figure, billionaire Elon Musk, who is out to reshape the government itself. His Department of Government Efficiency, staffed largely by young engineers, at least one of them just 19, have brought beds into their government offices. Musk posting on X, working the weekend is a superpower. His team getting access to the Treasury Department's payment system, which processes trillions of dollars of the government's bills and includes the personal information of millions of Americans. Musk then seizing control of USAID, which provides humanitarian assistance around the world, helping an estimated 32 million children suffering malnutrition and bringing food, water, shelter, and health care to victims of natural disasters. USAID's $43 billion budget is a tiny fraction of what the government spends, about 1%. But Musk, who is the world's richest man, posting, "We spent the weekend feeding USAID into the wood chipper." And tonight, sources tell ABC News that the State Department is now starting to evacuate all USAID staff who are on foreign assignments worldwide, some 1,500 to 2,000 people. The goal is to bring all those workers and their families back to the United States by this weekend. On Capitol Hill, Republicans applauding Musk's goals.
He's throwing out big ideas. And if anybody thinks that all of these big ideas are going to be implemented to conclusion, they don't understand the process of disruption.
But Democrats sounding the alarm.
It is unconscionable for him to be exercising the kind of influence and power that he is with his conflicts of interest and his financial benefits flowing to him from the kind of destructive impact. It's not disruptive, it's destructive.
Our thanks to Rachel Scott. The bodies of all 67 victims have now been recovered from the scene of that horrific mid-air collision near Washington's Reagan Airport. 64 of them from the airplane, 3 from the Army Black Hawk helicopter. All but one of the bodies have been positively identified. And tonight, there are moving tributes to the lives lost. Our Gio Benitez covers aviation for us.
Tonight, some closure for the families of that deadly air collision in Washington, D.C. Officials saying the remains of all 67 victims have now been recovered. Throughout the day, salvage crews pulling more wreckage from the American Airlines plane out of the Potomac. The NTSB now working on a detailed timeline and synchronizing data from the black boxes of both aircraft along with those ATC communications.
At 25, get the CRJ in flight. Pitch Club has an aircraft in flight for separation.
The NTSB obtaining training and flight logs for both flight crews, stating the Air Traffic Control Group has completed interviews of all 5 staffed positions in the tower. The key question, if the helicopter was flying higher than the allowed altitude of 200 feet around the airport, why? The most accurate flight data shows the crash happening at just over 300 feet. Overnight, a moving water cannon salute on the runway. The body of American Airlines flight attendant Ian Epstein flown to Charlotte to be buried. And U.S. figure skating sharing this tribute, remembering the 28 athletes, coaches, and family members who were lost. Many young figure skaters just starting to share their talent with the world.
Our thanks to Gio for that. Still much more to get to tonight coming up. If the winter has you dreaming of a beach somewhere, the Points guy is in the house with tips on how to make your travel dreams come true. But next, we are tracking a mass shooting at a school in Sweden.
People do not know how to date. That's why they come to us.
As a matchmaker, we're here to help you get your wings on.
Let's get some people married. Why are you single?
Maybe the kind of guys that I go for.
You go for hot guys.
Yeah.
It's a pitfall.
What would you say are like the top things you're looking for?
You don't like hairy men, so all Muslims are out. What are you talking about?
This process doesn't have to suck. He's cute.
Make it happen, boo.
Friday night.
A larger-than-life businessman gunned down in his office.
Will the discovery of his secret double life lead to the killer?
On an all-new 2020, long-hidden secrets from the past are uncovered.
Intimacy issues, betrayal, and rage.
Bob was having an affair.
She was very angry about that.
And this isn't the first time a family member was murdered. Now Friday.
See if you can solve this crime before police do.
The new 2020 Friday night on ABC.
Mr. President?
You were the last person to see the president alive.
Pink's trying to warn me.
Agent Collins, you're the only one I really trust. And I want to tell you the truth.
You're about to be entrusted with top secret information.
The president did something.
You're gonna want to hear this.
The biggest secret is right under your nose.
What aren't you telling me?
We need a symbol that can unite us.
Wait for it.
Save some for us, Cap.
Let's go.
Oh!
Captain America, caught in a trap.
All my descendants, they know me, my secrets, they ain't.
You want me? Come and get me!
Captain America, Brave New World. Rated PG-13. Get tickets now.
Reporting from Paris on the 80th anniversary of D-Day, I'm Tom Sufi Burridge. Wherever the story is, we'll take you there. You're streaming ABC News Live.
Welcome back. We're tracking several headlines around the world. At least 10 people have been killed in a shooting at an adult education center in Sweden today, the deadliest attack in Sweden's history. The shooting started as students were leaving a national exam. The Prime Minister said they were confined to a classroom fearing for their lives and called it a nightmare that no one should have to experience. The suspected shooter is among the 10 dead. Argentina's former president Alberto Fernandez was in court today facing charges of gender violence toward his ex-partner and the country's former First Lady Fabiola Yanez. Fernandez denies the allegations and refused to testify today. He claims the accusations result from a financial dispute and is seeking to have the case dismissed. In the eastern Congolese city of Goma, residents are surveying the damage from the Rwanda-backed M23 rebel group's attack last week. The UN says 3,000 people have died and at least 900 are waiting to be buried. A ceasefire is holding in the region, and talks between Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo are slated for February 8th. There are few things more relaxing than lying on the beach on a dream vacation you finally made happen, but getting there, not so much. From planning your trip to navigating the complex world of credit card points and travel rewards, the journey to your happy place can quickly become rather stressful. Fortunately, our next guest is here to help. In his new book, How to Win at Travel, Brian Kelly, also known as the Points Guy, shares his secrets to achieving travel success. Brian, kind enough to join us in studio tonight. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. I want people to enjoy the travel part. Because it can be enjoyable if you do it right.
All right, well, tell us. That's what we want to know, because you've been really sharing your tips and tricks and advice for years, but now you finally decided to put it in a book. What made you decide to do that?
Well, the travel world has changed so much, especially since the pandemic, and there are a lot of good things that have come out of it. And I talk about in my book, I think we're in the best age of travel. We're in the platinum age of travel. You know, things are amazing if you're sitting up front in the plane or know how to get the leg room or know how to get the free flight. So, you know, millions of people have followed thepointsguy.com, but I put together this book to help. There's still so many more people I see getting lost in the process, you know, canceled on by airlines, getting the worst seat on the plane, and it doesn't have to be that way.
So, right, many people know about the golden age of travel, right, when it was considered to be very luxurious. People would get dressed up to get on planes. But now you're talking about the platinum age.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it's a nod to platinum status, platinum credit cards, because what people don't realize, back in the day, you had to be rich. You could not be poor in travel. So I argue that travel is accessible today. You can go to Europe for less than $500 round trip. Everyday people can travel, especially if you take advantage of this loyalty ecosystem. And I want to wake people up, because in this day of inflation, we're not getting the raises we want. You need to find value in your everyday life. And that's what points are. In America, the cost of points are built into the cost of everything we do. So if you're not getting points for every purchase, you're losing out on value.
What advice would you give someone who's just trying to get their first reward credit card, for example? Because I was looking at the other day, you know, oh, do you want the platinum one? Do you want the reserve? Do you want, I mean, there are so many options. It really can be overwhelming.
So the first thing I would say is, you know, cheap can be expensive, meaning a lot of people will just say, well, give me the no annual fee card. Well, those don't come with very many points. You're not going to get a big sign-up bonus. So sometimes paying $95 will get you that $1,000 sign-up. So don't just look and try to get a no annual fee card. And look at what you spend your money on. So a lot of credit cards will offer category bonuses, meaning you earn 4 points per dollar on travel and dining on some cards. There's a built credit card where you earn points on rent with no fee. So if you're paying rent, you eat out and get groceries like most people, there's cards to get that align with what you're spending on. But what I also go into in an entire chapter is perks. Credit cards have perks now where the airline leaves you stranded. Your credit card is the one that'll pay for the Uber, pay for your hotel. You know, my son just drew on an expensive chair in my home that I just bought. My credit card is going to fully refund that $1,300 chair because it was bought within 90 days. So most people don't realize these perks and protections can be worth their weight in platinum.
I feel like I'm losing money by not actually adhering to some of these like golden rules and tricks. So when we talk about etiquette, because you have a chapter dedicated to that travel etiquette, let's do just kind of a lightning round. Who gets the armrest?
Middle seat.
Both sides?
Both sides. Middle seat gets both sides. I mean, they're in the middle. They deserve the 2 armrests.
Is it okay to recline?
It is okay to recline, but be mindful. Never recline fast, and don't recline during meal service, because no one wants to look at your scalp.
I do this all the time. I'm guilty of this. I ask people to switch seats. Is that okay? Especially if it's a one-for, like, I have an aisle for an aisle.
An eye for an aisle is totally fine. And just be nice, you know, or offer someone money. Hey, look, I really want to sit next to my partner. We booked late. I'll give you $100, you know. Some people, you know, when you're offering something inferior, give something in return.
Biggest travel pet peeve?
Oh, you know, I think people being mean to airport agents. I tell you people, I see it every day. Stop being mean. Those frontline agents are not the reason for the delay. Often, you know, they're just dealing with it. So you might be mad at an airline, but please don't take it out. And it's in your best interest to be nice to them.
Brian, thank you so much for coming on the show. You can buy his new book, How to Win at Travel, wherever books are sold. And still to come, the countdown to the Super Bowl is on, and the players are dishing about their sideline habits and a certain player's famous girlfriend.
This family is suffocated. We are all here to help them. We're gonna make this happen. We have 96 hours to build a house.
Come on, guys, it's moving day. Let's go. It can't be real.
This was more than just extreme home makeover. This was extreme life makeover.
Extreme Makeover Home Edition, Thursday on ABC and stream on Hulu.
The news never stops. We are here in Israel, a nation at war.
We heard what appeared to be gunfire. The former president rushed off the stage.
Hurricane Helene ravaging the coastline of Florida.
It's moving really fast, screaming across the state.
And that's why ABC News Live never stops.
Taking you to the center of the story.
As news breaks live.
We hear the small arms fire around us.
We're right on the border between Ukraine and Russia.
ABC News Live is there for you at the start of your day, all morning live.
ABC News Live, right there, as events unfold across the day.
ABC News Live, breaking down the day's top stories.
Lyle and Eric Menendez, there is new evidence in this case.
ABC News Live Prime going there, wherever the story is.
Are you going to build it back up?
And ABC News Live lighting up the weekends.
With breaking news and all the latest pop headlines.
Happy Oscars Sunday.
A lot to watch for tonight.
ABC News Live.
Because the news never stops.
Friday night.
A larger-than-life businessman gunned down in his office.
Will the discovery of his secret double life lead to the killer?
On an all-new 2020, long-hidden secrets from the past are uncovered.
Intimacy issues, betrayal, and rage.
Bob was having an affair.
She was very angry about that.
And this isn't the first time a family member was murdered. Now Friday.
See if you can solve this crime before police do.
The new 2020 Friday night on ABC.
Super Bowl opening night kicked off in New Orleans on Monday, and fans got a taste of their favorite players' sideline habits. And who's sick of hearing about Travis Kelce's girlfriend? Our Danny New reports.
The biggest night in American sports and television is almost here, as Super Bowl week kicked off last night in New Orleans with its opening night ceremonies.
Yeah, cheesecake them. We're ready, baby. Let's get this thing going.
Star players and coaches from the Chiefs and Eagles like Travis Kelce and Saquon Barkley were asked questions throughout the night by the media. However, when pressed, Kelce did have one question for the media in regards to online complaints that Kansas City gets special treatment from the officials.
Why are you guys leaning into this whole ref thing?
Mahomes steps up, throws, and he got it! Touchdown, Kelce!
Of course, folks also had to ask Kelce about how having a world-famous girlfriend like Taylor Swift pushes him.
Yeah, I better hold up my end of the bargain, right? I mean, if she's out here being the superstar she is and never taking no for an answer and always working her tail off, you know, I better match that energy for sure.
Who runs over his man, still at his feet, and he scores!
Meanwhile, though, the Eagles star tight end Dallas Goedert was not as familiar with Miss Swift's work.
Is she the one that, does she saying don't go chasing waterfalls? She doesn't.
He hasn't seen too many balls today. He's going to read a little passage here.
Then there's Eagles top receiver A.J. Brown, who famously read an inspirational book during the opening playoff game that then shot up to #1 on the Amazon book charts. The three-time Pro Bowler was asked if he would be bringing the same book to the sidelines of Super Bowl 59.
Yeah, same one. I don't know if I'll bring it out, but it'll be the same one.
However, the moment that perhaps drew the most attention on social media was when Eagles coach Nick Sirianni received a surprise, very warm greeting. That's former All-Pro wide receiver Chad Johnson there. On Instagram, the NFL reacted with, "What the heck is going on?" But clearly Sirianni seemed quite happy to see him.
I'm sure he preferred that kiss than the whole Gatorade spilling over his head. Our thanks to Danny New for that. And that is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us.
Wherever news breaks, it's so important to always remember that lives are changed. Here in London, in Buffalo.